Hi guys, here we are, we're starting a balayage. First of all, I'm just sectioning everything up. My favourite sectioning for the balayage is the traditional hot cross buns minus the back section, if that makes sense. So I just section the two front bits forward, leaving the whole back section as one back section, as you can see. Don't mind me trying to manage the mannequin. Alrighty, so we're doing our first section. First section is straight across. I find that gives the best coverage for when you lift the hair up and just a really nice base for the start of the balayage. So here we are, just straight across. Awesome. Alrighty. So I always do chunky weaves whenever I'm doing a balayage. You can see I'm doing them really nice and deep so that they go down to the other side, if that makes sense. So I'm basically just doing really deep weaves, making sure everything's nice and clean. I tease once I've done the weave. I am going to use the balayage board for this one. First of all, I do like to paint some product on the balayage board just so that I can make sure that I do get lots of saturation. When I apply the colour, I always tilt my brush on the side and I'm pressing down quite firmly to make sure that I get the saturation through to the other side. So when I do my weaves, I like to do 3 deep weaves. This makes it really nice and easy to make sure the blending is perfect. With my middle weave, I make sure that it's feathered up lower than the two outside weaves, if that makes sense. So it creates like a W. I'm always checking the underneath to make sure that it is consistent on both sides and we don't have any lines anywhere. I like to use foil to keep everything separated, especially when I want to get as much lightness as possible. Otherwise, you can just use one of the paper type things that have less incubation and produce less heat. Alrighty, so next section. I like to do these on an angle. I always forget if it's directional front or backwards. I honestly completely forget. But it's creating a V, if as you can see. Alright, so when I'm doing these sections here, I'm always projecting towards the face because you want the most amount of lightness around the face. So as I said before, I'm going to do 3 deep weaves. I do 3 weaves throughout because as I said, it makes it really nice and easy to create that beautiful W. On the middle weave, it is a lot lower than the two outside weaves and it creates beautiful blending and all different lengths of where the lightness starts, if that makes sense. Once again, trying to manage the mannequin head. So as you can see, it's all projected towards the face. I am making sure saturation is absolutely perfect and then I am feathering up. Looking back at this, I probably should have feathered up a little bit higher, but keep in mind that you do want to keep a fair bit of depth in there. It does make the top ones pop a little bit more. Depth is so important in a balayage. Without the depth, the blonde doesn't pop. And that's just me checking the underneath, making sure it's all perfect. Alrighty, so this next one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop some gloves on and I'm going to show you how I do it without a balayage board. This is great for people with a lot of thick hair and when you know it's going to take a good while to get all of the product through. So exact same concept, I do my 3 deep weaves, make sure they're perfect, make sure you're happy with them. I then tease, give it a good tease, you don't want to be afraid of teasing. I then start at the middle and saturate the color completely all the way down to the ends, working it through with my hands. That's when I flick it up. Once again, the outside weaves are higher a feathered up higher than the middle weave, which creates a beautiful double W, which makes the blending absolutely stunning. My view of the world and of myself by allowing me to feel empathy for my younger self and therefore understand who I am today better. But therapy can be customized to whatever. Wiping the hand so you don't get any extra product anywhere. My next section is going to be straight across. So you can start to see this little pattern working itself out. So I was straight across and then I had the V sections and now I'm straight across again. This creates beautiful depth. So there's my V sections and there's my straight across section. It creates like a
If you are
bricklaying
unsure
effect.
of what size sections to take, have a good look at those ends and see how much of those ends are going to be coloured, because that's what really matters.
A little bit of extra depth in this one, in this middle one, it does create a beautiful pop. You do want to make sure that your weaves are consistent and the same size, so if you need to alter them, don't be afraid. Putting product down first, making sure that there is complete saturation. Now I am pulling it down to show the camera exactly the way I'm applying it. However, when I am doing a balayage, I do like to make sure that everything is 90 at a 90-degree projection. That way when it does lay flat, it adds that bit of diffusion. So there we go, once again checking the underneath. And this does get more important as you get higher up, because you don't want any dots throughout the top. Obviously you don't want any dots anywhere, but I just take extra care through the top. I guess my curiosity about the different traumas and how trauma can. Okay, so we've done the straight across section and now we're going to follow the little triangles again. So it's in patterns, it goes straight across, triangles, straight across, etc. Depending on how much hair the person has is how many sections you're going to do. The doll's hair isn't amazing here, so it is a little bit hard to see, but you can see that I've done my straight across and now I'm doing my little triangle sections. And when I'm doing this, I'm making sure everything is projected towards the face, creating that bit of depth towards the back. So once again, doing the exact same thing, 3 deep weaves. As I get higher, I do like to leave less out of the weave, if that makes sense. The way I like to think about a balayage is where the lightness would naturally hit. Say if like a child was out in the sun a lot, or you know, like in the pool, and it naturally got lighter. That's how I think about a balayage all the time. I think a really important other thing to remember about a balayage is that you don't want to highlight the shorter bits of the hair too much. Think about it as kind of like face contouring. You want to bring out the better bits by lightening them, and you sort of want to kind of hide and camouflage the not as nice bits by letting them stay dark, if that makes sense. So once again, following through, projecting towards the face, doing my other little triangle section towards the top. You can see that I really push the color around to make sure that there is saturation. Saturation is absolute key when it comes to lightening in any aspect. Oh, and there goes the mannequin head. I have a feeling, no, I know that that isn't the last time that that's going to happen. Always making sure your hands are nice and clean so that you don't have any extra product anywhere you don't want it. Alright, so try and have a nice little look here. This is going to be my last section for the back. So just making sure all my sectioning is nice and clean. That doesn't look great, I didn't see it from this angle. So whenever I do the top section, I like to really over project. Just just like as I mentioned before, when you over project or have it at a 90-degree angle, when it does lay flat, any possible lines or anything that could have been applied in there will be diffused when it's laid down, and make the blending absolutely perfect, if that makes any sense at all. So teasing it right up, making sure I'm holding it up. I do a lot of extra teasing on this section to make sure that it is nice and fine. I always like a really nice fine layer coming over the top of everything. It's really annoying me that I did this on the side and that I'm projecting it to one side. You really need to make sure that you are right in front of all of your work so that you aren't projecting it any way you don't want to. This one is so important that you have perfect saturation and no dots whatsoever. That's going to be the bit that everyone sees. Alright, so that's the back done. Hopefully you can kind of see what happened there. So it's all been in the same sort of pattern, which creates like, like a bricklaying pattern, and creates beautiful depth where we need it. And that's the back done. So I'm going to move on to the front. On one side, I'm going to do one with a bit of a money piece. And then on the other side, I'm going to do one. Ooh, here we are, we're having a little sneak peek. Anyway, I'm going to do one with a money piece, one side without a money piece, and one side without a money piece. So when I do the money piece, which is the side I'm going to do first, I like to grab a different brush and clean my hands, make sure I have nothing on my hands so I can do a really nice clean foil just around the hairline. Depending on how heavy of a face frame you want is how many foils I do. My go-to is just one medium foil. Seems to be really beautiful. Getting myself a new brush. Every hairline is so different, so the way you do this and the way you place them is just going to be so different on each individual client. You really want to mirror the hairline when you are doing hairline foils. You want to make sure that the weave is consistent throughout so that there's no darker bits in the hairline, if that makes sense. Now, the way the dolly's hair is at the moment, well, the way the hairline is, it's going to be really hard to do a consistent weave. Can you see how there's a heavier bit of the subsection right near her face? That's just because of the point of her hairline, which is really annoying. If I was to do this on someone else's hair, I would have done a foil right in the middle of the head and then placed two on either side of the way I'm doing it now. But because I'm doing one side with a face framing and one side without a face framing, I'm just doing it like this, if that makes sense. So I'm still feathering towards the top so it's a nice soft grow out. Making sure you have really good saturation as usual. I did forget to mention that when I do this foil through the hairline, I do like to make sure that I'm using my weaker lightener that I use through the back because the hairline is so fragile. So if we have a look here, yes, see, that's annoying. I would have put a foil underneath that if I was face framing both sides, if that makes sense. So you guys know that I really like to mix up fresh lightener all the time. So that's what I'm going to go do. I'm going to bump up the peroxide. But when I do the face framing foils, even when I'm doing a full head, I always like to use the weaker one on the hairline like I've done now before I mix up the stronger mix, just so I don't blast out the hairline. If I do need to mix up because I've run out, I'll just mix a lower peroxide for this. So looks like I'm just mixing up. Yep, there's my next nice fresh lightener. we're just going to say she parts her hair in the middle. Ugh, that's not very middle, is it? But hey. Alright, so my first section is diagonal front, diagonal back. I don't know. I think this is diagonal back. But the way I like to remember it is it's mirroring the hairline from the ear. If that makes sense. So you can see it's almost pointing down. So what that's going to create is more lightness around the front with a little bit of depth behind the ear. When I am doing face framing foils, I do less teasing on the weave that's closest to the hairline, just so I can get it nice and close. I do like to feather the lightener pretty close to the hairline when I'm doing the face framing foils. It just blends it all in really beautifully. And checking the underneath. I do like to leave the tails out sometimes, especially when people's hair are a little bit fragile. I like to give the mid lengths of the hair the most amount of incubation with the foils and to let the ends breathe a little bit. And just following the exact same pattern, diagonal, let's say diagonal backwards. Oh, there goes the camera. Alright, so it's pointing down towards the temple. And I'm doing the exact same as I just did the previous one. Nice deep weaves. I do leave less of a subsection with the front to create more lightness around the front. You can see I'm leaving heaps less hair out that remains dark to create more lightness around the front. Give it a good tease. And even when I am working around the front, I do still like to direct everything towards the face. You obviously have to be careful not to flick lightener in their eyes. Slow and steady while you're learning. But yeah, you want to flick it quite close, but just be really careful. Alright, so you can see my two sections there. This is where it changes a bit. So I like to connect the front foil to the last sectioning, creating a bit of a triangle there, which creates that pretty bit of depth there. I really don't know how to explain this sectioning. I've kind of made it up myself. I wish I could explain it better, but hopefully seeing it makes it easier to understand. Always doing the 3 weaves. Giving it a good tease. Directing it towards the face and doing the W with the lightener. When I say the W, the outer weaves are getting feathered up higher than the middle weave. This lays beautifully over that first face framing foil. I'm going to do the next section the exact same. Oh yes, okay, so 2 sections diagonal backwards, and then starting on the third one is over the face, and then following it again over the face. I really wish I could explain it, but I'm just connecting the 2 sides in, if that makes sense. What about if you have an aspirin and you quickly drink an aspirin? So the key is don't get bitten by a snake. Right. Yeah. Good night. Even though I did do quite a heavy thick weave here, I give it a really good tease just to make sure that I do get really good saturation and it's not too much hair in the weave. I can't understand how you'd know how a snake could have sex with another snake. They do it nice and slow. Humans. It is really important to make sure that the top of your blending is fully covered by the foil, sorry, so that when you do lay everything down, don't get dots on your subsection. Now, what you can see here is that I have actually left a layer over the top of that. Oh, am I going to do one more here? Yes, I do one more here, leaving a softer layer over the top. I always do like to leave a really soft layer, a veil over the top. It just blends everything really, really beautifully. So this is my very, very top one for this side. So I hold it straight up, give it a really, really good tease, and make sure it's nice and fine and saturated. And this one, once again, is really, really important, just like that top back one. So you can see how those last three balayage foils lay beautifully over that first foil. I have a tiny little subsection that I leave, well, not really a subsection, a section I leave over the top. It's that little triangle there. It ends up going over the back and over the front just really beautifully, creating a really nice amount of depth. So the first two are diagonal forward, diagonal back, definitely diagonal back. And then those last three are coming over that first foil over the face. Clip it out over her face so that she's not claustrophobic or uncomfortable. Alright, okay, so on this side I am going to do pretty much the exact same thing, but I'm not doing the face framing foil. So this is for someone that doesn't want any obvious lightness around the face. Obviously there will be some lightness because we're balayaging it, but it's not going to be as extreme as having that foil there. So I'm going to start with my first section, just like the other side, pointing down towards the face, following the hairline around the ear. So yeah, pointing down, three thick weaves and a good tease. I'm always painting product on my balayage board first. It just makes sure that there's really good saturation there. When I'm applying the lightener and flicking up, I'm making sure that when I am flicking up, I'm putting less pressure the higher that I go up. It creates a really beautiful blending and the strokes to be softer as you go higher up. And doing the exact same section once again. Going down. This dolly hair has really inconsistent density. If the sectionings do look kind of different from side to side, that I was really struggling with the different densities on both sides. But yes, as you can see, I am applying that just like the other side, making sure to feather it nice and close around the hairline, around the face. I'm not sure if I said it before, but I do the weave closest to the face higher than I flick that up higher, then I flick it up the other weaves. So even though it's still a W, the weave closest to the face is flicked up higher. And now we are going to start with that other sectioning minus the face framing foil. So hopefully I turn this around here. Yes, okay, cool. So this creates a nice little triangle with some softness. They will create soft lightness around the face, but very softly. Nothing like that foil. That Dolly's headstand was really giving me some trouble, so I'm so sorry if you can't see properly at the moment. It has moved itself around. Awesome. And following the exact same sectioning there. So laying over that first balayage highlight foil. And it's just really important to emphasize that everything is being directed towards the face. I feel like you can see really clearly in that one the W, if that makes sense. It's really important to create that depth inside that foil by flicking it up higher and leaving a fair amount of depth in between flicking it up, if that makes sense. All right, one more section there, and we're going to leave our little triangle at the top. That's going to be our little veil over the whole lot. So I'm weaving, and I start teasing at a 90-degree angle when I realize I need to go all the way up. And I just reminded myself, so a lot of teasing on that section. I probably should have done a little bit more teasing there. When I do the top ones, I do like to do them finer, as I said, and I do like to feather them a fair bit higher to sort of replicate sort of like a foil, but not a foil. It just makes it blend really beautifully. Okay, and that is our balayage done. So if we